I won't be using real names in this story. To preface this, I'll just refer to myself as M. I'm a girl and I was 14 at the time it began. Now, this all kind of started back during my freshman year of high school in early 2020. During my third block biology class that semester, we were given a seating chart which had placed two of my friends in the row of seats right next to me. Now, right in front of me sat a boy whose name I didn't even know at the time, but I'll just refer to him as E. Now, even though my school is pretty small compared to most, I had never really seen E before other than just passing in the halls. E was just relatively quiet and he only ever spoke in class when he was called on, or I might hear him just randomly mumbling to himself. I just never really paid much attention to E during that class, and I had never even spoken to him at all for all I can remember, other than just an excuse me while trying to walk past his desk. The one thing that I did notice, however, was that he always kept a Bible with him on his desk, and he would occasionally read it rather than pay attention during class. Now, this is a school in the southern United States, so a lot of people here are Christians, including myself. However, even I found it a little off. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the seating chart placed him in the seat right in front of me and my friends directly next to me. The biology teacher was relatively chill and would often give us time at the end of the class to just talk and do whatever we needed to. During this time, I would usually just talk to my friends about whatever was going on or our plans for the weekend. You know, just normal freshman conversations. After about 4 weeks of the second semester, I had received a text from one of my more distant friends who also happened to be in that class. I'll just call her Jay. But she had basically told me that E had approached her after class that day and had asked her for my number. At first I was confused as to who E even was at the time. But after she explained to me that it was the boy who sat in front of me in biology, I was even more confused because, like I said, I had never talked to him. Before I could even think to tell Jay to not give him my number, it was too late. I had a text message from an unknown number. I opened it and it was E introducing himself and apologizing for not asking for my number himself, saying that he was just too shy. At first, I thought it was kind of sweet. That was until he had slowly begun to open up to me about how he had been listening to me talking to my friends in that class and how he had fallen in love with me and how he knew that I was sent by God to be with him. As soon as he started speaking to me about this, I immediately began to panic, but was too terrified to tell anyone at the time, which in hindsight was extremely stupid of me. I realized right away that he had been eavesdropping on my conversations with my two friends next to me in that class, and I was really terrified as to what he had overheard and what all he knew about me. I blocked him and just tried to push it to the back of my mind. The whole night after, my phone kept blowing up with texts from an unknown number that I knew was E because he was still trying to convince me to date him. But after that night, that was it for a long time. As I said, this was back during early 2020, so I just kept quiet in that class and I didn't really talk to him or my friends in that class until the pandemic hit. I think we all know how that went, but I was at least free from E in that class. And by the time things had gone back to normal at my school, I had completely forgotten all about E. Nearly 2 years later, and I was now a junior, still at the same school, and I hadn't even thought of E for a long time. Now, this was relatively close to the end of my band's marching season, and we had just finished up one of our after-school practices. I was walking out to my car and checking my missed notifications when I saw I had gotten an email. I opened it and I noticed it was my school email. I then checked who it was from, and it was E. My heart dropped. I immediately began to read it as soon as I was in my car, and it said, "I've wanted to tell you this in person for a long time. I'm in love with you, and I want to be with you." The email carried on, and I could barely finish reading it. I wanted to throw up. I hadn't even seen E since we got out of school for the pandemic, and I had honestly thought that he had moved schools. I screenshotted the email and didn't respond to him. I didn't even know why he would reach out to me through my school email, which I thought was very strange. Later that night, though, I had received a much longer email from him in which he continues to profess his love and how he wishes he could talk to me in person. Later on in the email, he claims to be messaging me to make up for a lie he gave years ago. He mentions he had messaged the person but later hoped they hadn't received it, and that if they did, he hoped it didn't hurt them. Now, who this person is, I still have no idea even to this day, and I don't think I ever will. After I received those emails, I finally went to my friends who told me to message him back and ask him to stop, so I did. I didn't hear from Eve for a while again, yet I was still terrified to go to school. I had recently begun to see him again in the halls, and I was scared that he might do or say something to me. He would begin to stare at me and I would just try to hurry away. A little over a week later, he had sent me another email. This time he was very open about how he had lied but still wouldn't say who he lied to. He then said,
"The scriptures say not to lie, and all who do are of the devil."
That he had been the devil and finally repented from his sins. He told me that he wished for me to find joy except for in these two things, being with someone else and not maintaining my virtue, and how he would rather die than live without me. Now, I am myself a Christian, but this outraged me. This man was basically telling me to stay a virgin for him. I felt sick after reading that, and after talking to my friends yet again and realizing how sick this guy truly was, they then had me go and report E to our school counselor. I was really scared to do so at first, but the counselor promised that she would actually take action and how his behavior was really concerning. She told me if he continued, it could technically be considered harassment, and he could be punished and that she would talk to him about it. I finally felt relief from him. A little while later, however, he had sent me one last email, which read,
"Thank you for telling everyone what I sent you. I'm glad that you did so. It doesn't matter why you did so, but God works everything for good. I have been silent for a month and a half. I have no reason to do so any longer. It would be good if you showed everyone. My passion was in the wrong place. My passion will be for righteousness from now on. I hold nothing against her for exposing what I've said to her. She did good for doing so. Everything I say and do should be revealed to all. I wish that everyone reading this, including M, would flee from fornication, which is common. By doing so, you defile the temple of the Holy Ghost. None who do so will be able to stand in judgment unless they repent."
I was shocked after reading that. I realized the counselor had actually spoken to him and that this was just the aftermath. I was still terrified for a while that he might email me again, but that was the last I had heard from me. We both kept going to the same school and I just learned to keep a distance from him. A year later and I'm finally a senior, and I'm currently about to graduate when I received one last update on E. I was scrolling through Facebook when I saw a post about a boy who had run away. It was E. His mother was pleading for people to keep an eye out for him. The only thing that he had taken with him when he left was his Bible. As far as I'm aware, he still hasn't been found, and I haven't seen him at school anymore. Even though it's been a full year since he last communicated with me, it's still terrifying to know he's just out there somewhere. I will give you some background information before I describe the incident. I was 15 years old at the time in the fall of 2006. About 11 months prior to this incident, I had moved from the Dominican Republic to the city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Now, people have always told me that I looked way older than my actual age. Some people have actually mistaken me for being 20 years old. It was probably because of the scars on my face, and I was also bald at 15 years old, and I was 5'8" during the time. Anyways, I had moved to one of the worst neighborhoods in Milwaukee during that time. While living there, I had always heard gunshots here and there, as well as arguments, but I never really felt like my life was in actual danger up until this incident. I remember this happening during early November, so it got pretty cold, especially in the Midwest. My mom had sent me to walk to the liquor store and the grocery store in the middle of the night at around 9 p.m. It was so that I could buy some snacks and food for the next day, since she wasn't going to be home. She gave me $25 and she also gave me her food stamps card. Now, you're probably wondering why my mom would send me to the liquor store in the middle of the night. Well, my mom got pretty drunk, and she gets drunk very easily, so she probably didn't even care at the moment. I lived about 9 blocks away from the said liquor store. So I was on my way to the liquor store, and it was probably about a 10-minute walk to get there. I felt pretty unsafe because I had a lot of cash on me, and I didn't want to get robbed since it was a violent area. Also, I forgot to mention, but I didn't speak good English at all. I had been learning English for about 4 months, so I could answer questions, but it would be pretty difficult for the average English speaker to understand what I was saying. Anyways, as I entered the liquor store, I realized that it's basically empty besides 2 other teenagers around my age. They were both just talking to each other, and when they heard the door open, they both looked at me in less than a second. They gave me a stare, and immediately I felt like they wanted to rob me. I'll describe the way they were dressed and how they looked. I walked into the small aisle where they were, and they didn't even say a word to me. They just stared at me, but I can see them staring at me through my peripheral vision. Teen number 1 who was mean mugging me the most was an African American who looked like he was around 15 years old. He had beat up Timberlands baggy blue jeans and a plain white t-shirt and an unzipped orange jacket, and he also had a small afro. He seemed to be around 5'3", so I feel like I could easily overpower him if it had come to that situation. Teenager number 2, who was also giving me a dead stare, looked around 17 years old. He was also African American, had black Adidas, wore baggy pants, and he had a black Iverson shirt on with a white t-shirt underneath it. He also had one of those early 90s flat high top fades. This teen was around my height, maybe half an inch taller, but he also seemed taller because of his high top fade. When I shop for anything, I usually take a pretty long time, and in this instance, I took around 3 or 4 minutes in that small liquor store. I had $25 on me, so I was going to buy lots of snacks for the night. I thought at this moment they were going to leave, but they were still just standing there not looking for anything. I had to walk in the same aisle as they were. I was looking at the liquor store clerk, and he wasn't paying attention to anything that was going on. So I walked to the aisle and opened the fridge, and right as I'm about to open it, they then whisper silently to me,
"Give me your money."
I understood what they said, even though my English wasn't that good. I then responded to them saying, "Sorry, I don't have any money." And it seemed like they didn't understand what I was trying to say at the time, probably because of my not so good English. I then pull my drink out, and then teenager number 2 whispers in an angry voice,
"I said give me your fucking money."
Right at that moment, I was pretty terrified because the clerk didn't pay attention to what the hell was going on. It seemed like he was dead. 2 teenagers in the store standing for 20 minutes, and the clerk didn't seem concerned or confused, not one bit. I then take a few steps back, and they stand there with angry looks on their faces. You may think this is funny, but at the time they seemed like they would kill me at any moment. The angry and dead looks that they gave me was one of the creepiest moments I've witnessed, and I have seen some really bad things. I decided to drop my snacks and walk out of the store, and as I'm walking out, they're just staring at me. This time, however, they're now holding their hands together as if they're doing some kind of prayer. At this moment, I'm speed walking down the sidewalk, and I decide to go to the nearby grocery store, which I remember is around 4 or 5 blocks away. I kept looking behind me in fear that they would find me. It's at this moment that I decide to take a shortcut down a very dirty alleyway, one of the stupidest decisions I've made. As I'm walking down this smelly alleyway, I then hear someone scream,
"Hey, we're gonna kill your fucking ass!"
I had no clue at the moment what they were trying to say, but in the tone, I knew that they had said something terrible. In those 3 seconds of silence, I looked back, and it was the same teenagers from before. They were standing about 70 feet away from me, and I'm not even lying when I say this. The shorter teen then pulled out a gun and fired 2 shots at me. In that exact moment, I had felt my adrenaline now rushing, and I'm running as fast as possible. I can hear them running as well, but they didn't fire any more shots. I ran the fastest that I've ever ran in my life because I felt like they had a very good chance at chasing me. I was athletic, but they were young too, and possibly could have caught up to me. I ran and entered a nearby Popeyes that was less than 8 blocks away. I ran inside and got looks from people, but I didn't care. I ran inside the bathroom, then hid inside a bathroom stall and just sat on the toilet, trying to comprehend what had just happened in that very exact moment. I think the moment I walked out of the liquor store, they had walked out as well, but didn't make it obvious. They could have easily shot me in the back without me even noticing them. I was in that bathroom for about half an hour, just waiting to hear if they would find me inside the restaurant as well. I got out of the bathroom and the lady cashier was just staring at me with a confused look, then asked me if I was okay. My stupid ass said yes, that I'm okay. I know now that this wasn't a good thing to say, and it was a really stupid moment for me. But when I walked out of the Popeyes, I then jogged near an alleyway and tried to look for a bike that I could take home with me so I could get out of there faster. I found a bike, got on it, and then rode as fast as I could all the way home. Once I went back home, I acted as normal and casual as I could. My mom in her drunken voice asked me where the food was, and I just simply told her that the store was closed so I couldn't purchase anything. I went to my room and wondered to myself if I should tell the cops or my mom about what the hell happened to me. I didn't want to tell my mom though because she would get worried, and I definitely didn't want to be involved or have anything to do with the cops. I still went to that store, but only during the daytime. But as I looked around, I haven't seen those same 2 teenagers again. I also decided to throw away my shallow baseball cap that I had on that day because I didn't want to get easily recognized by them, even though they could recognize me by my face very easily. About 7 months later after the incident, I had moved away from the house and moved to a different area in Milwaukee. It's now been 14 years, and I haven't seen those same 2 guys again, and I'm very glad that I haven't seen them. I don't know why they wanted to kill me, but I'm just glad that I made it out alive. I moved out of Milwaukee, and I can now speak proper English. The sad part is that Milwaukee has become way more violent now. I'm 30 years old now, and I'm really glad that none of those bullets ever hit me. If you have any more questions about the story, feel free to ask in the comments. Stay safe out there, everyone. My first encounter with this person was when I was 11 years old. My friend and I were playing at a park right down the street from my house. I watched as an older boy rode by us on his bicycle. He rides past us a couple times, but I don't think anything of it. The 4th time around, however, he drives through the park towards us. He approaches us and he holds out a piece of paper. "This is for you." The kid looked to be at least 15 or older. We take the paper and he rides off on his bike. Both my friend and I shared a confused look, and I went to go open the folded paper. It had an address with the message that said, "Come to my house for a surprise. Jay." My friend and I got very freaked out, dropped the note, and immediately ran back to my house. We thought that maybe this kid was just trying to make friends, but something about it made us very uncomfortable. Occasionally, we would see him ride his bike around, so we assumed that he lived nearby. The second encounter I had with him was a year or 2 later. I was walking home from that same friend's house. She didn't live too far away, since we technically lived on the same street. It would take me less than 10 minutes to walk back home. As I'm walking, I see someone on a bike in my peripheral vision. I immediately think back to that one kid and look over to see if it was the same person. I couldn't remember his face that well, but when I looked, I knew it was him. He was staring at me, but thankfully rode right past me. I thought I was in the clear and continued walking home. As I get home, I go to open the door. "Hey!" I heard someone yell. I turn around to see the kid on the bike now waving at me. I told my parents about him, but they just brushed it off, saying he was autistic. I felt bad, thinking maybe he just wanted friends and had poor social skills. But why would he follow a young girl home if he was trying to make a friend? The third encounter I had with him, I was walking to the store. When I had reached the cul-de-sac next to my street, I saw him standing in the middle of the grass divider. I tried to walk past, hoping he would leave me alone, but he began to approach me. He asked me what my name is. Hannah, I said, but I lied. Now, at this point, I was about 13 and he was at least 17. I turned around and started to walk away from my house, as I didn't want him to know where I was really going. He asked where I'm going, and I lie and say that I was going to a friend's house. The guy then asked me where the friend is, but I try to avoid the question. He then gets closer to me, and he asks for me to come with him. I'm sorry, I can't. I'm going to my friend's house. To which he then says, you really need to come with me. My heart begins to race and I get chills. No, I have to go, I'm sorry. As I walk off, he hangs back a little but is clearly still following me. I was now scrambling to think of a way I could get back to my house without him seeing where I went. I begin to walk towards the church that's right down the road when a car pulls into the cul-de-sac. The car stopped by the guy and then the window rolled down. I looked and it was some woman talking to him. I had no idea if they knew each other or not, but I didn't care. I just took this opportunity to get the fuck away. I immediately spin around and then dart back home. I think that was the fastest that I'd ever run in my life. When I get inside, I'm trying desperately to catch my breath while my dad then asked me about what happened. I explained and he agreed that it was creepy, but that he also doubted that the kid had any malicious intent. When I started high school, I would see him outside one of the buildings in a group of people, but thankfully he never approached me. What I thought was interesting is that on the note he gave me, it said that his name was Jay, but during his graduation ceremony, he used a completely different name. My last encounter with him was last year. Once again, I was walking. I was meeting with my friends at the church down the street. As I'm walking, I see the guy again and get super nervous. At this point, it had been years since I'd seen him. I called my friends right away and let them know what was going on so they knew to be fast since he was going to follow me again. He didn't catch up to me, but I could see him following me the whole way. As soon as I crossed the street to get to the church, he disappeared. My friend's car was luckily already there, so I just quickly got inside and then explained to them what the hell was going on. I've since moved, so hopefully that'll be the last I ever see of him. Part of me still feels bad because maybe it really was just an innocent attempt at getting a friend. But regardless, it scared the shit out of me. Hey everyone, that's about it for today's stories. If you have your own story that you would like to send, you can send it in at southerncannibal.com, or you can email it at southerncannibalstories@gmail.com. I look forward to telling your story. Have a good night or good day, everyone. And remember to always stay